This is MS Office Hours Community Call. We're going to do about a 15-20 minute session here, specifically on Office 365 Security Adoption Roadmap. So we've put this together, which is really a set of the top recommendations that we have around cybersecurity and how to adopt this stuff. Now, I will tell you that I am continuing to build out this particular deck and this content to incorporate some additional materials. We've got some other things that corporate is making to go along with this. So this is something that we're breathing a lot of life into, and we will revisit this again as a group. So if you missed something today, or you feel like I didn't cover it in depth enough, that's okay. We're going to come back to it and cover it more in the future. Don't worry. Okay, and so what we want to do here is kind of step into this and talk about how we lay out the security adoption roadmap. The first and most important thing I want to call out is you can go to aka.ms/first30days. You can see that URL up here in the upper right-hand corner or upper left-hand corner of this screen. And so you can go there anytime and get all of this. It's quite literally every word I think on here almost is inside of there today. We'll be adding more later. But that's where this was made out. You'll notice when you get there, or from this presentation, that this is all based on an Ignite session that was done in 2017, where you can watch a very in-depth presentation from our security experts in Redmond showing you exactly why and how this framework is to be applied. So this is sort of the beginning of how you should be thinking about this and give you an idea of how to kind of get started with all of it. So we'll go ahead and jump into this, and what you're going to find out as we do this is we've broken this up into 3 primary categories. What should you do in the first 30 days? And for those of you that have been in Office 365 for years, that doesn't mean, oh gosh, I missed it, I can't do it. This is moving forward, what should I be thinking about? So I'm asking each of you to think about, what would I do in the month of January to have the single greatest impact on the security posture of the organization and have the lowest possible impact on my end users? And that's what this first 30 days is about. The 90-day section is more about what am I going to do for the next 2 to 4 months after that to really dive deeper into this and really get these advanced configurations in place. Now, many of you are already really in the 90-day section for most of these tools. And then ultimately the beyond is just, what do we do beyond that to really integrate this with the other tools that we have? I get questions all the time of, how do I tie this to my SIM? How do I do this? How do I do that? That's where we're going to think about those things. So today we're going to focus primarily on the first 30 days. And in the first 30 days, we're going to break that down to these 4 categories. And we do this for each of those different 3 groups, but we're going to say we've got category of security management, threat management, identity and access management, and information protection. I even made you nice little icons rather than color coding it all, so you can tell to which group each of these things belong. Yes, that's right. Applause in the background because the nerd knows how to associate icons. Okay. We're going to talk about the first 30 days of the security adoption roadmap and really what should you be looking at. The first thing, and you guys have probably heard me on this community talk about this multiple times, is working with SecureScore. And you can get there by going to securescore.office.com. And again, this is an unusual thing for me to use PowerPoint, but for the sake of time trying to get through all this, I'm going to do this rather than trying to demo each one of these today. Now, we can come back and have individual sessions on any of these things that you guys would like to. As a matter of fact, it might make a great sort of trajectory for us to continue down. But SecureScore in particular is something that is not, I don't know if there's a link anywhere within the Office 365 Admin Center or Security and Compliance Center, and that still blows my mind why that isn't just a direct link or incorporated in there. But I don't know. Nobody asked me, but you can go to securescore.office.com, and it's going to give you a score, a number. You can see an example of it here, of a screenshot that I put in, where this particular tenant has a score of 248 out of 483. Now, I will tell you that that out of number changes. It grows. As more control sets become available, that number gets higher. And what I mean by that is this is really looking at, of all the things you could do to secure your environment, you have accomplished a certain sort of percentage of those or amount of them. And it's based more on the impact of those. And it will show you that, for instance, you may be able to raise your score by, maybe it's 50 points by implementing multi-factor authentication for all of your global admins, or reducing the number of global admins. But it makes a set of suggestions and then walks you through exactly what the impact of implementing those are, and then how you would actually implement them for each of them. And what I recommend you do with this is that you, as a department, set up a goal. So I suggest you take your number, in this case 248, put that somewhere in the office, put it on a whiteboard that everybody can see, and then put a goal. Maybe the goal for your organization is realistically 362. I don't know. How would I come up with that? It's because I would sort of look through the things that say, if you do this, it's going to increase it by this much. If you do this, it increases it by this much. I'd say, hey, these are the things that make sense for us as an organization. Our goal is to hit this number. And then we're going to keep that updated on the whiteboard. It's something we're working toward to improve the overall security posture of our Office 365 environment. Now, the interesting thing that you will find out as you go to this is there are actually a number of other what do I want to say? A number of other things that are coming into this. For instance, your Windows Defender is going to start having a secure score component inside of here as well. We've got some things already. If you're an Azure Security Center user, right? If you manage your on-prem and cloud-based servers through Azure Security Center, you're going to see a similar thing with a secure score there. So we're getting pretty consistent about this. Think of this as your credit score for the security posture of your environment. Next up, we're going to talk about the audit logging a little bit. Now, I'm hoping that you've already turned this on, but it turns out that you need to enable all of the audit logging inside your environment in order for most of this stuff to work. So you'll want to kind of go through this documentation. Don't just go, oh yeah, we got that, check the box, move on, right? You want to make sure you have the right audit logging turned on in the right places so you can do this. But really what we're talking about here is being able to find out if a user viewed or accessed a particular document, or deleted something out of their mailbox, right? And so I had a conversation with a state agency here just earlier this week, in fact, and that was one of the things that the concern was, is I don't know if we're going to let people store stuff in the cloud because we're worried about, will we even know what information they have up there? What did they do with it? Who did they share it with? Where did it go? And the reality is that when you go turn this on, you're going to find out that you have a much richer view of what's happening with data in the cloud than you do in your on-prem devices, because we have full audit logging and simple searching of those audit logs for every time that somebody touches a piece of data. You also can expand that further. You'll see in other tools to be able to search in a little bit as we move forward in this. So again, you can just search that through Security and Compliance Center to be able to start using that. Now, there is another thing. Not all of these things are available in the A1, and I fully acknowledge that. And one of my goals is to go back through this roadmap and sort of call out what's part of A1, A3, and A5. That's a bit of a challenge right now, and I'll come back and do that, in part because we have the Plan 1s, Plan 2s of different things, and that can make it difficult. This one in particular, as we talk about tuning the threat management policies, there are some things that you can do that are org-wide, that are part of A1. There are some other things that are a part of the A5 threat management or threat intelligence SKU as well. But this particular document is going to walk you through what are the things that you should be configuring to improve your overall security posture. Now, what you see, this little bit of a dashboard here, is the threat management dashboard that comes through the threat intelligence SKU. And so there are some great things if you happen to have A5 that you get the ability to see that you wouldn't otherwise have. So being able to see, as an example here, something I want to call out that I think is vital. It shows you, for instance, you can kind of see it here right in this section, if you can see my mouse dancing there, where there are about 4 different people listed who are the top target users for your environment. And what that does is it kind of shows you these are the people that are getting hit with all the ransomware, all the phishing attacks, or different things. Guess what? Those are the people who've probably fallen for those things time and time again, and their accounts may already be compromised, or they may just need some additional education directed toward them personally and directly. So something for you guys to consider as you're working with them. And then as we move forward here with viewing dashboards and reports, one of the things that happens regularly, I went and talked to a customer that's had A5 for a full year. They were one of the first customers that I knew in a K-12 to acquire it. And we're trying to determine if they were going to renew it, what was the value to them for it. And what we found out very quickly was they weren't going in and using any of the tools, weren't going and look at it. They had alerts and alarms and things were everywhere, and nobody was mining the till. Really? Really? I know it's a managed service. You know it's a managed service, but you got to pay attention. Come on, we can only tell you about so many things before you have to take an action on it. Now, here's the really cool thing with these tool sets, and in particular, the one that you kind of see here is the Cloud App Security, which exists in A3 and A5. In A3, it's scoped to just Office 365. If you have A5, then it can cover all of your other cloud services. But when you go into here, into Cloud App Security, you can actually go, oh, look at these alerts. Let me build a policy. So next time this happens, I can take create an automated response to that, right? So for instance, I can go in there and very quickly see what documents contain PII that have been shared publicly and allow access to anonymous users. What? If it has PII, it shouldn't allow anonymous access. It shouldn't even probably be shared publicly. Matter of fact, I may want to find anything that's PII that's shared externally at all. And so I can distinguish between those, find those with literally 4 clicks of the mouse, as Micah displayed on here one time, and then be able to remediate those very quickly and easily. So those are some of the things you want to do. Now, these documents, this is the important thing. These documents are going to walk you through what are the initial setups and steps to do these types of things. It's not trying to make you an expert on Cloud App Security and do everything in there, or make you an expert on Security and Compliance Center. Instead, it's going to show you these are the reports that you should be looking at, right? And these are the reports that you want to take action on. So this is a good place to go and start, is looking through these things and working with them. Now, the next thing is threat protection. By the way, I got to stop for just a second. Let me go back to this. All of this stuff is in that URL I gave you. I'm showing you this as a PowerPoint. You're going to go, this is great, Preston, but where do I get this PowerPoint? I literally copied and pasted all of this out of aka.ms/first 30 days. Now, I'll add some more to it, and there are a few things like this reports thing that may not be listed there, but I'll make this deck available to you guys once I finalize it for sure as well. Now, on this one, we say connect Cloud App Security. I walked through this documentation, saw this. I want you to try this. I'm not convinced for any of you that it's necessary to go through this particular step. The reason why I left it in here is because if it is necessary and you don't take this step, then it's useless to you. So what this really is Cloud App Security. So if you have A3 or A5, you need to make sure it's connected to your Office 365 environment, because it's entirely possible, by the way, to purchase Cloud App Security and use Azure Active Directory to manage it, to just manage your other cloud environments and not Office 365 at all. And in fact, you could have had an Azure Active Directory account and purchased Cloud Security some time ago and not even had an Office 365 environment. So that's probably where this came from, but you should just double check this. Make sure you're properly connected so that you can support all of the services. So if you look, Cloud App Security, you need to make sure that it's connected to each of these, not just Office 365 itself, but make sure it's also connected to SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, Power BI, and Exchange. And so I know, at least in the ones I checked, by default, they were for Office 365, but it's entirely possible my demo environments have some things that have already been sort of done magically for me. So it does say in here, and I made a note of this, again, I couldn't verify it, that Power BI and Exchange both require you to turn on logging. So before Cloud App Security can connect to them, you have to enable the audit logging inside of those. And so you can do a quick search to find out how to do that, or from the link that's right here inside that document, it gives you much more details and will probably tell you exactly how to accomplish that. Now, moving on to threat protection, security admin accounts. I feel like this is Preston preaching again, but I'm going to say it anyway, and you guys have probably heard this multiple times. Use dedicated admin accounts for admin activity. Wait, hold on. That's not what Preston said. That's right. This is me eating crow. I'm coming back to you saying, I did a bunch of research, looked into a lot of stuff, not just this document, but the one at the bottom, which, by the way, isn't in that ak.ms link that I gave you. But I did a lot of digging and found out that we Microsoft does absolutely still recommend they use dedicated admin accounts for admin activity. Go read what they're talking about there and how they talk about doing it. I think it's vital in how you sort of get it set up and work with it. It's not as simple as just creating two separate accounts from a recommendation standpoint. The biggest thing, though, is enforce multi-factor authentication for all admin accounts. There is another piece to this that shows up in the 60 days section of this. There's another guideline that shows it in the first 1 to 2 days. What I'm talking about is privileged account access. If you have Azure Active Directory Premium Plan 2, part of the A5 licensing for us, then I'm going to tell you, regardless of what this framework says, there is no reason that you shouldn't go set that up quite literally day one. Right? I tell everybody when I come meet with you, this is your homework. Go figure out how to set up for your environment privileged account access, which is to, and again, it's going to show up in the 60-day section of this, but I think it's something you should do right away because it only impacts your administrative staff, right? Only your IT admin staff, I mean, right? And what it is saying for anybody who has some kind of privileged account, I'm going to not allow them to have standing access. So nobody has standing administrative access if their account gets compromised. The only way you get administrative access is on a limited time based access control. So look into that if you have A5 or Azure Active Directory Plan 2. Use highly secure Windows 10 devices for admin activity. That's not just a generic term. There is a specific definition of highly secure Windows 10 devices, and that link is in here, and you should go dive into that. Now, for more detail at securing privileged access for hybrid and cloud deployments in Azure AD, you'll want to go to that URL that I had just accidentally clicked on, but that's okay because I'm going to get you guys the URL here real quick and put it in your IM window to make sure that everybody has it because I think it is truly that important. So if you don't have it, this is another thing. Now, this is not a sales pitch, I promise you, but this is just good security practice. You know, you don't have to buy Azure Active Directory Premium for Plan 2 for every single user to use this. You don't have to buy A5 for every single user to use this. You can purchase Azure Active Directory Premium Plan 2 just for the people who have privileged access and then use this control set for those users. Guys, seriously, this is one of the least expensive things on the menu and is vital to making sure that nobody gets the keys of the kingdom. Like I used to play games back in the 90s when God mode was a thing. If you are a global admin, that's God mode, protected. As a matter of fact, just remove that access when you're not using it. So that's soapbox again. See, I just can't get away from it, Dave. Identity protection, Azure Active Directory identity protection in general. Come here, find out more about this, how to use the features in identity protection to set it up. This is just a Plan 2 thing, just an A5 thing. So if you don't have that, I'm sorry. I just want to call this out because I do think it's an important thing and it's super simple to set up. It's using our black box, our machine learning algorithms to be able to rank a login at low, medium, or high risk based on a number of different criteria. So go look at that. It's super easy to set up, very low impact, and has a tremendous capability to help you secure your environment. So it fits great with the conditional access policies in Azure Active Directory. Information protection, and specifically securing SharePoint and your files. So go read this. This is something that not everybody, I think, understands up front, which is what Azure Information Protection does and allowing you to label and classify data and how you can work with that. Both A3 and A5 have different plans of this. In A3, it's a manual capability only. In A5, it's a manual or automatic process. But even in A1, there is a labeling process that's there. So please go take the time to look into secure SharePoint online sites and files. Again, this one is for A1, A3, and A5. There is a different flavor for each of those. This is all of that put together in a single table. So this is the stuff that you just saw in those slides, all put right here, with the exception of that one securing privileged access that I put in there for you, so that you have it. And then ultimately, we talk about what happens after 90 days, and we'll just go through this fairly quickly, but you can see we have the same 4 categories that I had before. We're basically telling you to go and check secure score, but this time, go and take some additional actions for your environment. Do more than just looking at it and setting a goal. This time you're actually going to start implementing some of this over the next 90 days and determining what's the impact as you go through it. Continue to regularly review all of those dashboards I talked about before, as well as the reports that are in Security and Compliance Center, Cloud App Security, and whatever SIM you use in your environment, which you can have our tools feed into or vice versa, or sort of collectively doing that. Look for and implement software updates, right? Hey, listen, security standpoint, updates are always critical. Matter of fact, look at using Intune to handle some of those updates for you. Can greatly simplify the process. Conduct attack simulations, especially if you have our A5 tooling, then you have these particular attack simulations built in through threat intelligence to be able to do spear phishing, password spray, brute force, all of that attack simulator. And so it's kind of nice. Look for any kind of sharing risk. So that's what I was talking about in Cloud App Security, where you're going to go in and start looking for specific risks where people have overshared, or maybe where students under the age of 13 are sharing externally, things like that. You can build a policy around that. Anybody who is a member of the U13 group, I can automatically disable external sharing, so that if they do share something, it just immediately disables that external sharing. Some cool things like that. Threat protection, this is where it tells you configure privileged access workstations. So this is getting into the actual intelligent or the secure workstations that you're on, as well as privileged identity management in your on-prem world, privileged access control in Azure Active Directory is what I mentioned you should do in the first 30 days. This is expanding upon that to also include your on-prem world where nobody has standing access there either. Configuring more of the event management stuff, you can dive into that. Enable MFA for all users, which we were talking about earlier. Big fan of that. You know, there's a whole lot of development coming there. Marge posted a great link for you guys earlier on that. Implement a set of conditional access and related policies. I'll be honest with you, at this point, that sucker may have to go in the first day or two. I have talked to so many of you guys who are getting slammed with phishing, and long before you took the time to set up Fish Hunter or do any of these other amazing things, just implementing conditional access control can thwart phishing in a massive hurry. Now, it doesn't stop people from giving over their credentials, but you can stop the people who have the credentials from being able to do anything of any real impact, especially in K-12s, where you can typically just disable access from outside the country. For higher eds, by the way, you can do the same thing and then just have an exception group. When somebody's traveling, you can just put them into an exception group, right? MFA, unless you're in the country, that type of stuff. So adapt and implement information protection policies, all of that. You guys got it there. So this is in essence how we're talking about moving on, sort of diving deeper into the things that we've been talking about for a couple of years here. And then finally, this is some recommendations that you'll find in that document about what should I do in an ongoing world, including at the bottom, you might want to read through how to protect yourself from Petya and WannaCry, right? So all those types of things. There's a lot more to it. We'll be adding more content to this. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. I will make this available on YouTube and then publish that link back into this team, and we'll see about doing this more in the future. And I'll stick around for more questions if you have them.